The New York Knicks, to me, have a massive problem. They lost 142 to 105 to Cleveland at the end of last week. That's what sparked this thought pattern. I saw that result at first, and I thought, what's going on there? And so then I watched the game in the morning and then thought about it. Then they went to Boston and lost 118 to 105 that weekend as well. Here's some facts about the New York Knicks. They cannot beat teams better than them in the standings in the East. New York's record against Boston and Cleveland is 0-5. They have not knocked off the Celtics or the Cavaliers. For reference, the Pacers, they won the season series against the Celtics, and they picked off they won a game against the Cavaliers on the road as well. So teams should at least be capable of winning a game there, right? I believe the Pacers are 2-3 against those two teams. I don't know if that's true. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But the Bucks as well. They're capable of picking off a game against these teams in the regular season. That's what championship contending. That's a telltale sign of an underdog championship contender to me. If you're capable of beating championship contenders, you don't have to do it often. You don't have to do it the majority of the time. If you're capable of doing it, you're probably capable of going on a run in the playoffs. And not to say the Knicks aren't capable of making a run of the playoffs, but the fact that they're 0-5 against Boston and Cleveland is very, very concerning. And the fact that they got absolutely picked apart by Cleveland, granted on the road, that's also very, very concerning. When you add in OKC and Denver, those are the top two teams in the West. That makes the Knicks 2-7. That's a stat I don't want to pay as much attention to because common sense would suggest that if you're third place in your conference, you probably are going to have a losing record against the teams at 1-2 in your conference. But the issue for me is the fact that the Knicks clearly and evidently have not won a game against the top two teams in the East all year long. They're 0-5. Mainly in the East, right? What happens when you have to win 4 out of 7 games against one of them? Because the finals is its own problem. But if the Knicks are going to get there, what happens when you have to beat the Cavaliers 4 times and then beat the Celtics 4 times in the week after? That's a situation that the Knicks very, very feasibly could find themselves in. When you look at the landscape of the East, it's a top 6 and then a drop-off, right? The play-in tournament teams like the Magic and the Heat and the Bulls and the Hawks, they're not good. And I think that it's very likely that the two teams that make it out of the play-in in the East are going to get obliterated right away. Obviously, that's kind of common sense, but the Cavs and the Celtics I don't see slipping up against the Magic or the Bulls or someone like that at all whatsoever. I just don't envision that being the case in any way. So the Celtics and Cavs, to me, are kind of predictively locks to be in the second round, in the Eastern Conference semifinals. So the Knicks, if they were the 3 seed, would have to play one of them, and it'd probably be Boston. And the fact that this team, again, is 0-5 against Cleveland and Boston puts them in a very dangerous position as we get set for the postseason because the Pacers have won big games against both those teams. The Bucks have been able to win games against teams like that, right? The Knicks are struggling to beat teams better than them in the East. They can win very consistently. They can beat the Hornets, right? They can beat the Trailblazers. They can beat the Pistons, for all I care, right? They can very consistently beat the teams below them, but they struggle to break through, and they haven't broken through at all in the Eastern Conference against a team above their pedgree in the standings. That concerns me for their championship chances. Of course, it makes sense that the number 1 team in the East would beat the number 3 team in the East, but it doesn't make as much sense that the number 3 team in the East is completely incapable and completely incompetent, seemingly, when they play against the top 2 teams in the East. Because, again, at the end of the day, the Knicks are still a top 3 team in the East. So how is this happening, right? Why are we living in a world right now where the New York Knicks are 0-5 against the Cavs and the Celtics? Part of it is recency bias. They played their last 2 games were against the Cavaliers and the Celtics. Both were on the road. They were in the same weekend. That's a very difficult stretch. And in that stretch, Karl-Anthony Towns has been injured. He had a knee injury earlier in the year. He didn't look fully healthy against Boston by any stretch of the imagination. He didn't look fully healthy against Cleveland as well. The front court defense has struggled against Cleveland, but it struggled in that weekend a lot, and it's because Karl-Anthony Towns just doesn't seem to be as physically capable as maybe we would hope for him to be. This team has been frequently out-rebounded. It's been weakness in the front court primarily, again, partially because of the injury to Karl-Anthony Towns. This Knicks team across the board, they struggle to defend the 3, right? They struggle to defend elite shooters. The complete rosters have the recipe. The Cavaliers really have the recipe to take down the Knicks because they have everything. And this is why the Cavaliers have a recipe to win a championship, even though they haven't really garnered that much playoff experience yet. The Cavaliers right now, Um, right, they've got the way the Cavaliers are built. They have Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland in the backcourt. They have Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen down low in the front court, and they have someone, maybe it's Max Strus, for example, or Ty Jerome, a fifth guy on the floor that they rotate, who can produce when they come in the game. Then they step out, someone else comes in. Whether they want to go big or play small ball, Cleveland has it all. They're really capable of doing anything. That's why they've won so many games and are capable of beating basically every team in the game right now. But New York, on the flip side of that, when you play a team like Cleveland, they really have everything, because the front court's shaky right now with an injured Karl Anthony Towns and really just a shaky front court across the board. And if you're struggling to defend the three, an elite shooter, someone like Donovan Mitchell, could just go off on you like he did. The Cavaliers are built to beat the Knicks because the Knicks struggle in the same areas where the Cleveland Cavaliers are known to succeed in. It's been fine because the Knicks, again, are still a top 3 team in the East, undisputably right now, and they score at a very high level, and they do have star power, and they are great when they're great. But this is a New York team right now that isn't even close against Cleveland and is also not very close against Boston. Again, both those games on the road, but they're 0-5 against both of those teams combined throughout the season. The question of whether or not the New York Knicks are a championship contender is very much more so brought into question after these results. It's wild to hear, but they might not be championship contenders because I don't know if they're capable of getting out of the East. They haven't shown me in any way that they're capable of getting out of the East, and it's almost inevitable that they're going to have to play one of the Cavaliers or Celtics, and it's probable. It's I don't know about probable, but it's certainly very considerably a strong chance that they're going to have to play both the Cavaliers and the Celtics in the playoffs, and then you have the NBA Finals. So I don't know at all why we're looking at the Knicks and potentially suggesting, if anyone's suggesting, that they're a championship contender. I understand the common sense subject of the fact that the Knicks are the number 3 team in the East. They're still very good. They win a lot of games. They have star power. They have all the tools they may need to go win a championship. This is a team that got close, obviously lost in the Eastern Conference semifinals last year, but they looked fantastic throughout the season. They looked fantastic even in the playoffs. A team that very well could have gone to the conference finals and potentially knocked out the Celtics and put themselves in position to win it all if they hadn't lost to the Pacers in Game 7. But still, this Knicks team right now, they have that season. They add Karl Anthony Towns. You think that they're putting themselves in position to completely blow everyone out of the water in the East. You think they're the favorites in the East, and now we're in a situation where against the true favorites in the East, in Cleveland and Boston, they're 0-5. I'm concerned about the Knicks. They may not be championship contenders if we're putting together a realistic list of teams that could win it all. There's certainly less teams in the East than there are in the West, and I don't know if the Knicks are on that list. They have plenty of time to prove me wrong. But 0-5 against the Celtics and the Cavaliers is not at all what you want to see from a team that's in position and with an open championship window.